Geraldo Rivera, celebrating a half century in the news business, Fox News correspondent at large and host of I Am Geraldo 50 Years, now streaming on Fox Nation. I only have him beat by 13 years. This is my 63rd year, Geraldo. It's good to see you again.
You too, Larry. You're the real veteran. I feel like a young rookie next to you, buddy.
Okay, let's get into it. What's your take on the media reports that Russia, and they get stronger every day, offering bounties to Taliban fighters?
Well, I think a lot of things about it, Larry. First of all, it makes me furious, makes me want to puke. I get very angry if the charges are true. You know, when Russia was in Afghanistan, the United States backed the Mujahideen, we called them in those days. They were our allies. They were freedom fighters, and we did, supply them with the RPGs and the other targeted missiles that they used to shoot the Russians. So it's part of the dirty game of the great game, the war, the quiet war that's been going on. I hope these charges are not true. They seem illogical in the context of today with peace talks going on. We want to get out of Afghanistan, our longest war. I did 11 assignments there. I'm sick of it. We've lost so many people. I want to get out. We want to get out. The Russians want us out. Why would the Russians do something that would piss us off? I don't know. It seems illogical, but it also seems like yet another attack on Donald Trump, Larry.
Putin told me years ago that he doesn't want to tell America what to do, but the biggest mistake you're making is being in Afghanistan.
Well, I agree with Vladimir Putin on that. Afghanistan, once we got rid of al-Qaeda, we should have just said goodbye to Afghanistan, trying to build a modern nation there. We have the same frustration the Russians did, the British did, Alexander the Great did. It's not a conquerable country, and I want to leave the Afghans to their fate, Larry.
President Trump says this is probably another fabricated Russian hoax by fake news. What, Geraldo, we're both in news. You regard us as fake?
I think that any story about Trump that puts Trump in a negative light gets traction with the mainstream media. There is a real hatred of the 45th president by the mainstream media, by the Washington Post, by the New York Times, by the big networks. I think they take any bit of evidence, any shred of proof of some negative story, and they put it on the front page. Russia, the collusion was a hoax. For 3 years, America was distracted by this fake story. So I would not be at all surprised if this current story was also fake. I want to see the proof myself. I want to know, was the president briefed?
Okay. I know you a long time. I know President Trump a long, long time. Do you regard him as a good president?
The president has had a very difficult time, Larry. I consider him a friend of mine. I think that he's done some great things. Prior to the pandemic, America's economy was at historic highs. It was humming along in such an effective and efficient way that it was elevating many of the historically disadvantaged groups. African American unemployment was at the lowest level ever. More women were working than ever before. Our general unemployment rate was the lowest ever. Things were really working. He was doing so well before the pandemic hit, Larry.
But when the pandemic hit, you said that Trump was doing an epic job, it's almost funny, of mitigating the coronavirus catastrophe. How could you possibly have said that?
Hindsight is 2020, Larry. I wonder how any of us would have handled it. I know that on CNN in the first week of March, they were saying that this was going to be just another flu, that it was another annoyance. And then 2 weeks later, it was this epic epidemic.
Who said that?
Anderson Cooper. Anderson, check it out. Around March 5th,
Called it a
March
flu?
4th or 5th. It was compared it to the flu. Everyone, not everyone. Once China lied to the WHO, once they lied about the human-to-human transfer of the disease, we were all back on our heels. We were all taking it easy. We were all distracted by that phony impeachment that was happening to the president. We were all distracted by politics. We were all, with our eye off the ball. Did the president, was he the wizard who steered us through this with minimum damage? No, obviously not. There were missteps made. I wish we had taken it more seriously, but he was not alone, Larry. That's my point. And there were no, voices, loud voices.
There were no loud voices? Oh, come on now. Weren't you once a liberal?
This has nothing to do with liberal or conservative. I was never a Democrat. I've always been a registered Republican or an independent. In terms of being a progressive person or a relatively moderate person, I consider myself roadkill. Why roadkill? Roger Ailes once said the only thing in the middle of the road in American politics is roadkill. I'm in the middle of the road. In terms of immigration reform, in terms of abortion or choice, in terms of gun control, I still have progressive viewpoints. But I believe in the American enterprise system, and I want to give the 45th President of the United States the benefit of the doubt. He has been harried. He has been harassed. He has been attacked. He has been, even before he took office, they were trying to impeach him. It's been very, very frustrating to watch as cheerleaders in the mainstream media have taken every story, every scrap, like the Russia collusion baloney. Everybody looking back on it knows now the President of the United States was not a spy for Russia. He wasn't a traitor to the United States. He wasn't a secret agent whose alliance was to Moscow, not Washington. And yet that was a front page story in the New York Times. He's been treated extremely unfairly, and I think that history will judge him more moderately, in hindsight, than he is currently being judged.
You think he's a one-term president?
Do I think the president is going to win re-election? It's a very, very difficult uphill climb for the president. He's behind Joe Biden in every poll by double digits. I think that the president will be judged by what happens with this pandemic. If we can get a handle on it, I think he has a reasonable chance of re-election. If not, I think he'll be defeated, Larry.
As a champion of civil rights, a champion of civil rights, how do you regard this president's record regarding race relations in that area? How's he done?
That's a great question. As a Republican, I think that the best civil right is a good paying job with great benefits and job security. I think that's what Trump delivered. In that way, Trump was a civil rights activist. By elevating the most humble among us, he was doing a civil right. That was real civil rights, not the empty rhetoric that we've heard for decades. He was helping improve the lives of minority people. That's a civil rights activist, in my view. Now, is he a lifelong member of the NAACP? Is he a member of Black Lives Matter? Has he embraced, the politicians who are generally speaking urban Democrats? I think the answer to that is obvious, but you knew that when you asked me the question.
Don't you? Don't you embrace Black Lives Matter? Don't Black Lives Matter? And the president's never said it. Never said it.
Larry, last weekend in Chicago, 18 people were killed. Black people killed by other black people, including 4 teenagers and a 20-month-old child. If Black Lives Matter really cared, then those black lives would matter. Black toddlers' lives would matter. Black infants' lives would matter. Black teenagers' lives would matter. But the Black Lives Matter. Hold it. Let me just finish.
The
Black Lives Matter.
Don't care about that?
I think the Black Lives Matter organization only cares about black lives taken by blue, by cops. This is all about police brutality, the relationship between the police and the minority community. It's not about Black Lives Matter. It's about black and blue relations. Those are separate issues. I think a far more important issue in terms of black lives, aside from the economy, is this urban violence that has been a plague on the United States. I mean, how is it so many people die in a single weekend and there's not a mention of it from any Democrat? Where was Joe Biden when 18 people were killed in Chicago last weekend? You know, I'm sure he cares, but he doesn't speak to it because it doesn't suit his political agenda. The political agenda is everybody on the Democratic side flock to Black Lives Matter and create an illusion that if you're not for Black Lives Matter, you're not for civil rights, and that's false, Larry.
So you could hardly call Donald Trump forerunner in the battle for civil rights on the part of blacks. You could never say that, Geraldo. I could not believe you would ever say that. Donald Trump is a leader in the civil rights movement in this country.
Larry, I go back to what I said. When black unemployment was below 5% and closer to white unemployment than it has ever been, that to me is civil rights. The civil right, who passed the criminal justice reform? Did Barack Obama pass criminal justice reform? No, it was Donald Trump in a bipartisan effort. He just did that. What about the economic opportunity zones that Trump has created? I think that you have to give credit where credit is due. Is some of his language unfortunate? Does he sometimes have a casual, cavalier attitude? Does he not recognize that when you endorse Confederate statues, you are offending people? I think that all those things are true, and I think that he deserves just criticism for that thick head and thin skin that he has. Having said that, I go back to what my point is. My point is there's gross hypocrisy on the left when it comes to civil rights, and it takes sometimes someone like Donald Trump to pierce the veil of that hypocrisy to reveal the harsh truth underneath, Larry.